Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today we will be breaking down Season 3, Episode 7 of The Mandalorian, in other words being Chapter 23 of the series, and in my opinion, a huge step up from the rest of this season, and arguably one of the best episodes of the entire series. And this episode is titled The Spies. Starting this episode off on Coruscant as Elia Kane or G86 walks through the alleyways and streets of the planet with a sort of Blade Runner feel to these different scenes and shots. And of course, G86 or Elia Kane, whichever you prefer to call her, is the double sort of spy that is playing the New Republic and was formerly a part of Moff Gideon's crew, and the one that framed and wiped Dr. Pershing's memory. Anyways though, she ends up making it to an alleyway where she is approached by and meets with an Imperial probe droid, where she is scanned by the droid as she identifies herself as TK2755. The TK identification codes are basically what were used to identify stormtroopers, just like how they identified the clone troopers with the CT codes. The droid connects her to Moff Gideon through the holo message, where it is revealed that the pirate attack on Navarro 7 was actually ordered by Moff Gideon, meaning that Carson Teva was right about the entire situation. Elia tells Gideon that Bo, Din, and their Mandalorian tribes are the ones responsible for defending Navarro 7 and not the New Republic. So Gideon ends their call off after saying that he will deal with the Mandalorians himself, as he begins to walk through the Imperial base, which is most likely the same location that we saw him at later in the episode, as he walks by some sort of stormtrooper guards that look like a sort of mix of the Imperial stormtroopers and the First Order stormtroopers, possibly being a type of Imperial super commando, as these sort of shield doors open a lot like the ones in the Phantom Menace during Darth Maul, Kenobi, and Qui Gon Jinn's duel on Naboo. Gideon ends up walking through a room that has a few pods in it that look a lot like cloning pods, which is something that has been hinted at before in the series, as it is likely connected to the resurrection of Emperor Palpatine and the creation of Snoke. Finally entering into a room that has a bunch of Imperial leaders in it that are on a holo message call. Now, a few of these guys are random and unnamed, but also a few of them are rather important characters. Amongst these Imperial leaders is Gilad Pellaeon, who is basically Thrawn's right-hand man during most of his novels. Also amongst this group is Brendol Hux, the father of General Hux from the sequel trilogy. Anyways though, this group is referred to as the Shadow Council here, and they end up name-dropping Thrawn once again in the series, and Moff Gideon basically challenges Thrawn's imminent return and his leadership, which personally I do not think is going to go well for him in the long run. They end up mentioning that Gideon has requested reinforcements to deal with the Mandalorian threat, including TIE interceptors and bombers, but also 3 Praetorian guards. Now, Praetorian guards were the guards that protected Snoke in The Last Jedi, and provided one of the really good fight scenes, and they were also a pretty big redeeming quality for that trilogy for me personally, because of that really good fight scene, regardless of how you feel about those movies. They also end up mentioning the status of Project Necromancer, which is a huge sort of name drop, as it is also referring to the resurrection of Emperor Palpatine through the process of cloning and transferring essence. Lots of sequel references in this episode, it seems. Gideon basically repeats himself from earlier and says that he will get rid of the Mandalorians once and for all, and then we cut away from this sequence after they all say, "Long live the Empire." We cut to Navarro 7 as the people of the planet are seemingly starting to put the city back together after the pirate attack, as the Mandalorian fleet fly in and land to meet with the other Mandalorians. And we can see that the Mandalorians that are with Bo have actually added the symbol of the mythosaur to the bottom of Gideon's old ship. The 2 different Mandalorian tribes meet each other, and there is definitely a lot of tension, as their creeds and beliefs are very, very different, and they obviously do not see eye to eye. Grief Karga brings Mando to his office, where we see that IG-11, who I guess we can can now call IG-12, is finally rebuilt and put back together and is now a sort of vehicle, as they put Grogu in it and he takes it for a test drive as he spams the different voice lines that were put in it, so now he can technically communicate in some way with the rest of the group. Grogu basically has his own version of a Hulkbuster or Iron Man suit now, I guess you could say. On their way back to the Mandalorian fleet, Grogu and Mando stop at a food stand after Grogu tries to steal some of their food, where he ends up picking up a Milo Run fruit, or however you want to pronounce that word, which is something we have seen a ton in the Rebels series. Back at the camp now, after some hesitation, Bo does manage to gather the people and bring in some volunteers to join the scouting party that will go in to scout out Mandalore's surface, as it is now time to reclaim their home. They arrive above the atmosphere of Mandalore and send in the scouting party. As they look down at the destruction of their planet, all seemingly in extreme disappointment and array, we can also see that one of the Mandalorians aboard the gauntlet has a Death Watch patch on his armor. They jetpack down to the surface and clear the landing zone for Bo, Mando, Grogu, and the armorer, and begin walking through the planet before a sort of sail barge heads towards them from a distance. However, the sail barge is piloted by other Mandalorians who have been living on the planet this entire time, where they offer their allegiance to Bo. After meeting with and now teaming up with these Mandalorians, the group sits around the table on the sail barge as the surviving Mandalorians talk about the Purge of Mandalore and how they survived, and also how they were to never surrender, as all Mandalorians are expected to be severe warriors and to never surrender to the enemy. However, Bo says that that is not true, because she herself surrendered to the Empire, revealing that when the Purge happened and their defeat was imminent, she decided to meet with Moff Gideon to make a deal, so that the remaining Mandalorians would be spared, but he ended up betraying her, which is how he obtained the Dark Saber. Following their little conversation there, Bo stares out at the destruction of their homeworld, likely reminiscing on how she feels as if she failed her people during the Purge, which is where Mando walks over to her and basically pledges his loyalty to her until her song or story is fully written and told. After the other Mandalorians inform Bo and the others that they will take them right to the Great Forge, the armorer tells Bo that she will leave and take the injured Mandalorians back to the cruiser while the rest of the group heads down to the Forge, in which she does. Quite convenient if you ask me. More on what I mean by that in a bit. As the rest of the group head towards the Great Forge on board of the sail barge, after some conflict between the two tribes, they end up getting attacked by a giant creature, possibly a foreshadowing as to what's to come. With a conflict and the taming of the mythosaur, the attack ends up causing them to retreat and head into the caves, which puts them right on track to the Great Forge, which is where they arrive rather quickly. After Axe Woes and a few others talk about how important the Forge was and how it's the heart of their people, they all hear jetpacks in the distance coming towards them as Imperial troopers wearing Beskar armor, possibly being some sort of Imperial super commandos, fly in and attack them. A few Mandalorians get taken out as well as some of the Imperial troopers, and then Axe Woes makes a run for it to go get reinforcements from their fleet, which could in itself also be seen as quite convenient, and he could also be the other spy that the episode's title refers to, but I really don't think so, honestly. They cause the Imperials to retreat deeper into the caves, and we see that Gideon and the Imperials have turned most of this area of Mandalore into an entire base for the Empire, as it all has the same sort of infrastructure that we often see in different Imperial buildings or ships, and there are entire hangars of TIE interceptors and bombers here as well. The Imperial retreat turns out to be an ambush as the blast doors close, separating the two groups of Mandalorians, and then more Imperials come flying in turn capturing Din as Moff Gideon flies down in a Mandalorian suit of his own that has horns on it. Now, if you don't remember what having horns on your Mandalorian helmet means, it typically meant that that specific Mandalorian was loyal to Darth Maul during his reign over Mandalore and its people. This could mean that Gideon could have formerly been a Mandalorian himself, but I have a feeling that somebody else else made this armor for him. As to how Gideon came to learn how to forge Mandalorian Beskar armor and why his also has horns on it, well, I think that's where the actual second spy comes in, as Elia Kane is the obvious one spy, but the episode title refers to multiple spies. I believe that the second spy could very well be the Armorer. She is one of the very few left, if not the only one left, that knows how to forge Beskar armor and weapons. She also has horns on her own helmet, and she conveniently left right before the group went into the forge and got ambushed. If she was a former Mandalorian, possibly even Rook caste specifically, it could make sense that she would turn loyalties to the Empire, as most Mandalorians did so as well, like Gar Saxon for example. Anyways though, Gideon confronts Mando and tells his troops to take him to the debriefing room as Grogu helplessly watches it all happen. This could possibly lead to a mirror of the last season, as Grogu could go save Mando like how Mando went to save him. Gideon also reveals that the armor in that suit that he is wearing is a new and improved version of the Dark Troopers, and its biggest improvement is that he is inside the suit now, a lot like how the final forms of the Dark Troopers went in the books and stuff. He also mentions that he has plans to make and clone an entire army that will serve him and retake the galaxy for the Empire, that has the best parts from each of the strongest groups and factions to ever exist in the galaxy: the Jedi, the Mandalorians, and himself. Before leaving, Gideon is confronted by Bo, and she promises him that he will be dealt with, as she turns around, activates the Dark Saber, and begins cutting through the blast door behind them so that they can retreat, much like how Qui Gon cut through the blast doors in the Phantom Menace. While she does that, the rest of the Mandalorians fire at the other blast door in front of them to try to get through it, so Gideon tells his men to open the door and kill them all, as he flies off and escapes, at least for now. The Imperials just keep on coming, and Bo finishes getting through the blast door, so now they can retreat and head back to their fleet. But as they retreat, Paz Vizsla closes the blast door behind him to hold off the Imperials himself, saying his last, "This is the way." He takes out tons of the Imperials in a blaze of glory, almost seeming as if he has won, until the 3 Praetorian guards come in and make quick work of Paz in a pretty brutal way as he tries to fight them off with his vibra blade and shield, but to no avail as he is eventually defeated. It seems as if Heavy from the Clone Wars brought a curse to characters that wield minigun sort of blasters, first Heavy himself, then Commander Thorn, and now Paz Vizsla. But at least they all go out like heroes. After the Praetorian guards walk away, leaving a fallen Paz Vizsla behind, and now dead, leaving his son Ragnar behind and the one to carry on the legacy of Clan Vizsla, the episode ends off. And wow, this episode was 100% a huge step up from the rest of the season, and the last episode specifically. Tons of story development, and now the rising and concluding conflict already within arm's reach. It was also a pretty emotional episode and had some really good action sequences as well, and I loved all of the different references and Easter eggs. Overall, it was a great entry for the series and definitely one of my favorite episodes, and I really cannot wait for the season finale next week. But of course, I would like to hear about your thoughts on this episode as well, so make sure to leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown on this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.